Hi everyone, my name is Sandra and today I'm going to be talking about deep sea coral. So first I want to mention what exactly coral is if you are not familiar. So coral is made up of thousands to hundreds of polyps. We can see here polyps are these tiny soft-bodied creatures that are able to secrete limestone, which is calcium carbonate. And these guys attach to rock or dead skeletons, which create the whole coral structure. And most of these corals contain zooxanthellae, and these zooxanthellae are microscopic algae that use the coral's waste products to produce their own food using photosynthesis. So we see here that this is a symbiotic relationship. And when it comes to coral reproduction, there are cues from the lunar cycle and water temperature every year. So there are spawning events. Colonies of corals just release their eggs and sperm, which results in a blizzard of these flakes of white, yellow, red, and orange colors. Here we can see an example. And once fertilization is successful in the water column, an embryo develops into a coral larva, which is known as a planula. And these planulae float for days, even weeks, before dropping to the ocean floor if everything goes well. And once this occurs, it attaches to some sort of substrate and they grow into new colonies at about 0.4 inches per year. So we talked about coral in general, so now let's dive into deep sea coral. No pun intended. So the first deep sea coral were discovered by fishermen about 250 years ago. And given by the name, we can see that they're found in cold waters since they're so deep into the ocean with little to no, pardon the noise. Okay. Cold waters with little to no sunlight. Specifically found in waters of the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Ecuador, Japan, and the US. And they're even found off the coast of Antarctica, which consists of waters as cold as 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And we can see that scientists have mapped less than 0.05% of the seafloor. So we can only imagine what's in the rest of the, basically 99% of the seafloor we do not know. So the possibilities are endless of what type of coral and organisms are out there. So when it comes to deep or shallow water corals, they belong to two classes within the phylum Cnidaria. So the first class is class Anthozoa, which are made up of hexacorals and octocorals, which are hard calcium-based reefs, and soft corals and contains the Gorgonian sea fan, as we can see here in red. And the other class is the class Hydrozoa, which is a massive and brittle calcium carbonate skeletons. As we can see here as an example, we have fire coral, which is a hydrozoan. So other facts about deep sea coral is that they grow a few millimeters per year. So we can see that it's a pretty slow rate. It's going to take a while for them to reach this size or even this size. So they do not form symbiotic relationships with algae, just how we mentioned with zooxanthellae. There are no zooxanthellae found in the deep sea. And the main reason is because there's no sun, right? Found in the deep sea, so that zooxanthellae wouldn't be able to survive. And instead, what they do is that they capture microscopic organisms and detritus from the water column that just flows down into the ocean floor, and they use that as their nutrients. Deep sea coral also serve as a productive habitat, which means it's spawning grounds for many fish, such as groupers, sea bass, and lobsters. And they're also they are also a shelter for unknown species because there's so many deep sea coral out there. We don't know what other species can be using deep sea coral as a habitat. which is also something to discover in the future, hopefully. Some interesting facts about deep sea coral. They are organisms known to be useful for fighting antibiotic resistant infections in living among these deep sea coral gardens. So that's really going to be helpful for the future in the medicine field. And related to the depth of the ocean, only 3 people have been able to visit the Challenger depth, which is known as the deepest point of the Mariana Trench, which is 7 miles down from the ocean surface. And right here we have the Challenger Deep, which is the vessel that goes into the Challenger depth. A lot of Challenger depths names, but we see here the vessel that went down the Mariana Trench, and this is the view that it had. So corals face many challenges. So one is that they face the destruction of them. Trawling or dragging on the ocean floor with heavy fishing gear can actually damage these coral. And oil and gas exploration, which is needed, right, against the ocean floor. So um, the coral's just going to get damaged from that. Also, due to climate change, rising sea temperatures and ocean acidification does affect shallow coral, but it's not been studied completely if deep sea coral are going to be affected by these factors. But we can assume that it's most likely to have the same consequences, but not as severe. And we can see here how trawling of the ocean floor kind of impacted this area. We can see a lot of rubble around and just coral sporadically in this area. So what is being done to protect these deep sea coral? There are NOAA funds and guides. Um, so NOAA actually funds and guides many explorations to map seafloor and discover new life forms. So their goal is to increase that 0.05% of the seafloor that we know to hopefully 100 one day. We also have state and local agencies that are involved in research. And outreach is very important, I would say. Many people don't know about coral, so it's important to talk about it with your friends. I recently taught a friend what coral bleaching was. They had no idea. So I think it's very important to talk talk with others what issues are out there regarding corals. And coral restoration is done for shallow water coral, but I'm sure in the future it can be done for deep sea coral once we know more information about them. So I wanted to point out some things that you guys can do to help these coral. Try not to buy jewelry that's actually made up of deep sea coral. You'd be surprised what's out there. Make wise seafood choices that are sustainable fishing practices. Those practices that don't use destructive fish trawling when they are out in the ocean, and reduce their amount of carbon emissions because that results in ocean acidification, and support local organizations that are involved in this research. One I can think of is the Aquarium of the Pacific that is involved in coral restoration and research. So that's a place that you guys can reach out to if you're interested. But I also volunteer there, so if you're interested, you can let me know as well. And that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed my deep sea coral presentation. Oh, it's still recording. Hi.